Welcome back to Outsiders. I'm James Morrow, and as always, I am joined by the rumbustious Rowan Dean and the raucous Rita Panahy. Now, fellow Outsiders, I've got some disturbing news for you. Do you like hamburgers? Was that a yes? Well then, sorry, you might just be a Russian agent. At least that's what our delightfully deranged friends at the Washington Post suggested this week when one of their columnists wrote that, like so much about this current administration, even Trump's beloved hamburgers have surprising ties to Russia. Where do you begin with this sort of lunacy? Maybe it's safest not to. But there's a serious side to all this Russia paranoia, and it reared its head this week in the wake of this week's Democratic presidential debates in the United States. First, have a look at this clip of Hawaii's Tulsi Gabbard, for my money, the sanest of all the Democratic candidates for president, demolishing the record of Californian Kamala Harris, and particularly her behavior when she was a prosecutor and attorney general in Canada.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Pretty brutal, and there's more where that came from. But here's the thing. Harris is a darling of the media establishment. Many in the American press are calling her Hillary 2.0, and amazingly, they mean that in a good way, with various columnists saying it is Harris and Harris alone who has what it takes to beat President Trump next November. These guys don't need an upstart combat veteran like Tulsi Gabbard getting in the way. So, for her trouble of pointing out Kamala Harris's deeply troubling record as a state prosecutor in California, Gabbard is now being tarred as, you guessed it, a Russian stooge, because the clip of her eviscerating the establishment candidate, which we just saw, went viral, and rightfully so. NBC dutifully reported that, quote, the Russian propaganda machine that tried to influence the 2016 U.S. election is now promoting the presidential aspirations of a controversial Hawaii Democrat who earlier this month declared her intention to run for president in 2020. I mean, you'd see where they're going with this. Controversial, everything just because she called somebody out. Political analyst and former Time magazine editor Richard Stengel said on Twitter, this is a clear example of Russian disinformation happening in real time. And New York Times op-ed contributor Wajahat Ali tweeted, beware the Russian bots and their promotion of Tulsi Gabbard sowing racial discord, especially around Kamala Harris. You get the idea, and we could do these all morning. But I'll just say this. It's a funny old world where the Democrat-aligned media suggests that to fight Russian authoritarianism, voters should back the candidate who withheld evidence that kept a man on death row. Enjoy your burgers, comrades.
You talk about funny business. There's been some funny business on Twitter because when Tulsi was absolutely trending everywhere, after that debate, she was the most Googled candidate in every state. She wasn't trending on Twitter. Assad was. So the fact that she met with Assad and she holds some different opinions about Americans' involvement in wars around the world, she was being, again, almost defamed as some sort of Assad apologist, some Russian stooge. And
it is really interesting how Twitter will play with the rankings and things like that. But the thing about Tulsi Gabbard, too, is that she is an Army veteran. She was a combat medic. So she has been deployed in the front lines, sees the consequences of these endless wars that Trump ran against, in which Trump has largely delivered on. And so she threatens that Democrat establishment, which has now oddly become the very much pro-interventionist, pro-military party.
It is mad. If 10 years ago you told me it would be the Democrats who would be calling for America getting involved in these wars around the world, I would have told you were mad. But they have taken that position. Anything Trump stands for, they will be against. If he stands for little furry puppies, they'll want to put them down.
The other thing, too, is that this whole incident with the Russia thing, 2 points on that very quickly. Number one, it shows that the Hillary machine is completely behind Harris because all of their friendly reporters got the talking points about Russia right away. But number two, it also means that Russia is becoming the new climate change. You know, anything you don't like, you blame on Russia. But every minute we spend talking about Russia means that we're not talking about China, means we're not talking about geopolitics and all the other important threats in the world.
And with Russia too, sorry, Rowan, Mitch McConnell is another one who's popping it. He's now Moscow Mitch. I mean, it is just...
I thought it was cocaine Mitch.
Well, I always wondered what these strange Russian writings on the back of our little... Anyway,
sorry. Don't talk about that.